everyone, welcome to Peaky Boardgamer. My name is Hector. When I want to play a board game that's less than an hour, the first thing that crosses my mind is one of Steve Finn's designs. This is why today I will explain how to play Mining Colony, which was produced in 2021. This one is for 1 to 4 players, yes, it has a solo mode and plays in about 40 minutes. In the game, players are trying to build their base in an outer planet. Let's see how the game is played. In the game, players are trying to build a colony on a resource-rich planet. On each round, a card will determine the type and number of resources available to the players. Using their excavation cards, players will be bidding in order to lay hands to the most valuable resources. Players will be developing the surface of the planet in a way to hold more resources. By placing these resources efficiently, players will be able to construct structures that will grant more victory points. At the end of the game, the player who has constructed the best base will win in Mining Colony. At first, place the central board in the middle of the table. Separate the development tiles by type and then stack them to the dedicated spaces on the left side of the main board. Then randomize the tokens by shuffling each stack. These are the 10 resource cards, one for each round in the game. Shuffle them and place them to the right side of the main board. Then create supplies with the different resources of the game. We have crystals in 4 different colors, and we also have science stations that have the same color as crystals. Then we have outposts, ships and workers that come in 3 different colors. Outposts and science stations are also called structures, and you should use 1 less of each color for each player not in the game. So in my 3 players example, I will exclude a color set of science stations and also 1 set of outposts. Also create a supply for the build-over tokens as well as for credits. Players take a colony board. These boards are double-sided, with this side being more advanced. Players have to agree in advance on the side they'll be playing the game with. Colony boards are also linked to a color. Then players take the 12 excavation cards of the corresponding color, which is shuffled and placed next to the colony board facing downwards. The game is now ready to start. The game is played in 10 rounds and each round consists of 3 phases. The first phase is Discover, in which a card dictates which new resources will be added to the main board. The second phase is Excavate, in which all players will play one of their cards, and this will determine which player will take which resources from the main board. Finally, we have the Develop phase, in which players will be trying to place the new resources on their personal board in the most efficient way. Now let's see each one of these phases in greater detail. The main board is split to 4 zones where new resources will be added on each turn. The first step of the Discover phase is to flip the top resource card facing upwards. The resource card is also split to 4 numbered zones and depicts various resources. Next, you need to add the depicted resources from the supplies onto the zones, but only in zones up to the number of players in the game. So in my 3 players example, I will only add the resources in zones 1 to 3. When adding development tiles, you always use the top tile from the stack. After you finish adding resources, the resource card remains in a discard pile. In phase 2, Excavate, players take the top 3 cards from their excavation deck. All cards from all sets have different numbers. However, the numbers have been designed in a way so that all sets are balanced. After players examine their cards secretly, they will have to play one of them facing downwards and will return the other 2 in the bottom of their excavation deck. The cards can be placed in any order. Also, players that have credits can spend one of them in order to refresh their hand if they don't like the cards. They have to discard all 3 of them in any order to the bottom of the stack, and then they'll draw 3 new ones from the top. We will see later how these credits are earned. After all players have played 1 card, all cards are revealed simultaneously. Now, using the order dictated by the number of the played cards, each player selects one of the zones and takes all of the resources. It is not possible to have any ties, as all numbers in the players' decks are different. Last but not least, the played card has to remain in front of each player until the end of the round, after which it is placed in a personal discard pile. In the third phase, Develop, all players simultaneously use all the resources they gained in the previous phase. The colony board of players is actually a grid of squares. Light orange squares are undeveloped while dark orange squares are developed. As you can see, all players start with a pre-printed developed row. By adding development tiles onto their board, players are developing their colony. However, all development tiles must be adjacent to at least another developed area. When placing a tile, you can never overlap a developed area and you may never exceed the boundaries of the grid. Development tiles depict three different types of buildings. There are also some empty squares depicted on these tiles. These are empty but still developed squares. Each type of building can take one different type of resource. Domes can take a worker of any color, while landing pads can take one ship of any color as well. The third type is storage units, which accepts crystals. Storage units are color specific. This one, for example, accepts only white crystals. Multicolored storage units like these three, however, can accept a crystal of any color. In the top, there is a staging area which is not part of the colony, where players may store one resource of each type. So, for example, I could place my green crystal to either inside my colony or to my empty storage unit in my staging area. Players may move resources in the staging area to valid spaces on their colony at any time. However, after tiles and resources are placed in the colony, they can never move again. Resources can also be discarded to gain credits as long as these resources have not yet been placed in the colony. You can also discard resources in the staging area. Discarding a worker, a ship, or a crystal grants the player with one credit that can be placed here. Discarding the development tile awards the player with one credit for each square of this tile. So discarding this specific tile would grant the player with an additional 4 credits. By placing resources efficiently, players can build structures which are outposts and science stations. As soon as you have placed a worker and a ship of the same color separated by a single developed empty square, you immediately gain an outpost of the same color which is built in the empty space. Likewise, if you do the same with same colored crystals, you immediately build a science station of the same color between them. You may not build a green science station here because this space is not empty. The crystals, workers and ships that have already been used to create a structure cannot be used again in a different set. Players can also spend credits to take build-over tokens and place them into their colony. The cost is 1 credit per token, which can then be placed to any developed square that has no resource on top. So I could create a landing pad here or change the storage unit with a landing pad. I could also use a blank token to create a blank developed space. And by doing so here, I have immediately built a green science station. Here we see 5 credit slots that can be exceeded, however, at the end of the phase 3, you need to discard down to 5. Structures and build-over tokens are limited. If multiple players desire the same component, the component will be built by the player who played the highest value excavation card in the previous phase. After the 10th round, the game comes to an end and we move to scoring. In scoring, players score 2 victory points for each structure in their colony and 1 victory point for all other resources. Players also score 1 victory point for each unused credit. Then, all players reveal their 2 unused excavation cards. Then, the player with the highest total value of cards gains 6 victory points, the second one 3, and the third player only 1 victory point. If there are any ties, these break in favor to the player that has the higher lower card. For example, my total is 41 and so is the blue player's. My lower card, however, is higher than the blue player's and I win the tie. Last but not least, each player loses 1 victory point for each undeveloped square in their colony. The player with the highest scoring total wins the game. If there are any ties, the tied player who scored better in this category wins the game. In the solo mode, the player is racing against time and there is also a virtual opponent to make things more difficult. The goal of the game is to develop all colony, all squares in the grid, and also manage to place all 7 available structures. As soon as these goals are achieved, the game ends in victory of the player. If not achieved by the end of the game, the player loses. At first, you must choose the difficulty level to play. There are 4 levels: easy, moderate, hard and very hard. Then, you set up the game exactly the same as in a 2-players game. The virtual opponent uses only a deck of cards and has no colony board. There's also a virtual area to gather the opponent's gained resources. The first phase of the game is exactly the same. You flip a card and you add all depicted resources as in a 2-players game. In the second phase, the player plays as normal, draws 3 cards and has to play one of them. Then you flip the top card of the opponent's deck. If the player played a higher valued card, the player will choose a zone first and will leave the other zone for the opponent. But if the opponent has played a higher valued card, they choose first. If the opponent played a card with an odd value, they take all resources from zone 1. But if the number is even, they take resources from the second zone and place them into their virtual resources area. The development tile selected by the opponent is not needed and can return in the box. The player then takes their resources. In the third phase, the player plays as normal. However, there are a couple of more rules regarding the spending of credits. In the solo mode, the cost of buying a build-over token depends on the difficulty level chosen. In easy is 1 credit, in moderate is 2, hard is 3, and in very hard is 4 credits. So if I play in moderate level, I need to spend 2 credits to gain 1 build-over token. In solo, the player also has the option to spend 1 more credit and place the token in an undeveloped square, which is not possible in the multiplayer mode. There is also one last option. A player can spend 1 credit and exchange 1 resource with the same type resource from the opponent's pool of resources. The player can only exchange not placed resources or resources from the staging area. Finally, at the end of the 10th round, you reveal the remaining cards of the player and that of the opponents. If the player's total is more than that of the opponent's, the player receives 4 credits to spend immediately before the game ends. And that was the video for today, and thanks for watching. If you like our videos and want to see more, please subscribe to my channel. Until next time, have fun and play more board games.